I'm Nick Broomfield, the director of Last Man Standing, which is a follow-up to a film I did in around 2002 called Biggie and Tupac. Biggie and Tupac are arguably the two most, I would say, accomplished rap artists who wrote incredibly sort of profound lyrics about their lives, and both of whom, in a sense, paid for their art by both being killed. They got caught up in a gang war, really, that had nothing to do with either of them. Their deaths were really a complete tragedy, and I think are still very haunting because they've never really been satisfactorily resolved. The killing was orchestrated and the hit was put out by Suge Knight, who actually at the time was in prison. I think it was in Mule Creek State Prison, but he placed the hit. He did that as a sort of revenge killing for Tupac being killed. And particularly in the case of Biggie Smalls, there are very, very strong indications that the LAPD or LAPD police officers were involved in that hit. And there's been a long law case brought by Valletta Wallace, Biggie's mum, against the LAPD, and the LAPD did everything possible to withhold and conceal evidence and to make it impossible for her to really get justice in the court of law. I think the connection between Suge Knight and the rogue police officers who were working off duty for death row is undoubtedly completely established, despite the claims to the contrary by the LAPD, who carried on their own separate investigation. The other thing was a positive identification of officers David Mack and Rafael Perez, who were the main suspects being involved in the shooting of Biggie Smalls, who were identified by a witness as being at the Peterson Motor Museum on the evening of that Biggie got killed. After the LA riots, they opened the ranks up of the LAPD. And there was a lot of new recruitment. There were not the normal vetting checks that should have happened. A lot of people got in who should not have been police officers. And David Mack and Rafael Perez were two of these. And the LAPD ended up spending a couple of million in just sort of buying off all the various cases that were brought against the LAPD. So there was very widespread corruption, and not only confined to death row records, it was an enormously wide phenomenon that was going on at that time. Xavier Jimenez was a judge on the Fair Rights Tribunal for the LAPD. In other words, if there was a claim brought against a particular officer or against the LAPD, they would have this Fair Rights Tribunal. And Xavier worked for the LAPD for about 30 years. And he said, what he witnessed with regard to concealing evidence on the Biggie Smalls killing was probably, the worst he'd witnessed during that 30 years. And basically, two LAPD detectives had gone to two separate prisons and intimidated witnesses by saying that if they testified implicating Rafael Perez and David Mack, they would be killed in the prison by friends of David Mack and Rafael Perez. When one of the witnesses was asked about what had happened and whether or not he had anything further to say about Rafael and Perez, the police prosecutor stood up and said, if you were told to shut your mouth and not answer these questions, you were warned already. And, and I think Xavier had never seen this kind of thing happening before in the court. It's a case that has involved a lot of human tragedy, I think. And I think that's really what the case has come to represent. It's come to represent, are we going to be intimidated by the sort of might of a very powerful police force that has a history of incredible corruption, Or are we actually going to follow, the beliefs of some very brave individuals who have consistently and persistently said that, this killing was definitely done by LAPD police officers who should be, reprimanded and held accountable for their actions, which I think is very important, because you obviously don't want to have a police force where this kind of thing is possible and where they appear to have gotten away with it. The Wallace estate basically dropped the lawsuit out of just, sheer, it had just gone on for years and years and years. I think Valletta had just had enough. And I think she's absolutely convinced in the theory that Russell Poole had, that the LAPD were involved in the killing, but just couldn't spend any more of her life or her money, which was basically Biggie's money, I guess, pursuing something where there was a complete lack of responsibility on the part of the authorities to take any responsibility for what they'd done. I just hope that there is a sort of overwhelming weight of evidence which will promote some kind of proper, maybe an independent investigation. An independent investigation, either through kind of the FBI or somebody else other than the LAPD, that would resolve this, once and for all. A resolution of this case is very important, because it tells people that the world isn't quite as corrupt as we all think it is. And there are some really decent people out there who care and deserve to be rewarded for their beliefs. And I think if we want to have good police officers, and there are a lot of really good, conscientious police officers who go out for what they really believe in, they need to be encouraged. And one of the ways to encourage them is to come up with the truth on this case. There's sort of ample evidence of it.